Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Contractor Evolution. This is Benji. Let's get started. So small average job size businesses, or small AJS, as we'll say for short, they have a unique set of obstacles to growth that most other contractors never have to confront. If you're a junk removal business, you do landscape maintenance or window cleaning or pressure washing or gutters, or you do Christmas lights, or you're a service plumber or electrician, I probably left out a few, but if you're in a business that fits loosely in one of those categories, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Scaling to $1 million a year, $500 at a time, is no small feat, right? Basic napkin math reveals that's a lot of jobs for a lot of clients. And the high volume nature of these businesses makes for a drastically different growth formula compared to the medium or large average job size businesses, who, by the way, enjoy the luxury of growing their companies doing $5,000 jobs or $100,000 jobs or even $1 million jobs. Barry Hartman is the co-founder of 505 Junk, a pay-by-weight junk removal business here in Vancouver, BC. And since 2011, he's worked relentlessly to crack the code on small AJS growth. And in the last few years, he really has. This year, they'll do $6 million in revenue with an AJS of about $866. Seriously, do the math on that. So if you're a small AJS contractor or home service business, there are 4 key things that you need to master, but I'm not giving away any spoilers here in the intro. You have to listen to the whole episode with Barry to find out. So let's dive in.
You're watching Contractor Evolution, where we unpack the systems, tactics, and skills you need to take your fast-growing contracting business to the next level.
You're here to learn what it takes to scale up, work less, and increase profitability. You've come to the right place.
Stay tuned to learn what separates the new breed of contractor from the old school, and welcome to your ultimate guide on the business of contracting.
Barry Hartman, welcome back to Contractor Evolution. It is so good to see you, my friend.
Thank you so much for having me, Benji. Great to see you too, man.
So today's episode, I don't know, we're still working on the title. It's going to be something along the lines of like small average job size dominance, like how to absolutely pummel and grow with a small AJS business. But I think it's actually important to set some context around this and talk a little bit about AJS and what average job size is as a category first, and then why small average job size is different. So can I just, I'm going to do a quick setup on this first, and I'll get you to chime in a sec, Barry. Average job size, or AJS for short, is something that we track a lot at Breakthrough Academy. And it's a really useful metric. I mean, literally how you calculate it is how much revenue did you do last year divided by how many jobs did you complete to execute that revenue. So a large average job size, business is a custom home builder, a landscape construction. They build big, expensive, and they have a large average ticket, large average job size. Medium is like, painting, metal railings. There'd be a whole list of like mid-average job size businesses. And then there's small average job size, which is like 505 Junk and many of the listeners who are listening to this episode today. The reason we track it is because your average job size is super, super influential on a whole bunch of things about how that business runs. If you build a different widget, you need to have a different factory, just to put it simply. It has a huge impact on sales and marketing, like we're going to talk about later. You have to sell and market a ton more jobs than the builder who has the luxury of doing, 10, maybe 15 projects a year. It has a huge impact on the organizational chart. And so it just, as a result, it's a useful way. AJS, average job size, is a useful way for us to categorize different business types. Now, for the context of this conversation, small average job size, we're going to say is anything under an AJS under $1,500. Good examples of that, relatable examples of that would be junk removal, like you guys at 505, window cleaning, gutter cleaning, pressure washing, landscape maintenance, and then any other like service-based specialized. If you're a service electrician, service plumber, that would be small average job size. And the reason we're having this conversation, the reason I'm excited to have Barry on, is we're going to talk about how to grow a small average job size business, which is uniquely different than a mid-average job size or a large average job size. Did I miss anything? Anything you'd add to that, Barry?
honestly, that was probably one of the best descriptions of a small average job size I've ever heard. Actually, I'm glad we're bringing this to light because it's not an obvious topic to dive into, but it's a really important one because it sort of drives the entire business model. So
Totally.
no, I don't think you missed anything. I'm excited to get into it.
Let's talk wardrobe. Before we get into your story, this is really important. You like the sweater. This is a nice green, nice hoodie, nice hat. I got a t-shirt underneath. I might actually take a layer off. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, wardrobe today is brought to you by Brooke Cambridge, owner of BLC Painting. They are a residential and commercial painting contractor. They do interior and exterior. Been in Breakthrough Academy for 3 years. They work with Coach Harold. Coach Harold's getting a lot of pop lately. I got to say, it's like almost every episode. It's all Harold. From Boston, Mass. One big challenge she's trying to solve this year. She says, unlike any other year, we have a lack of leads. We're actually challenged on the marketing front for the first time in a while. And then a win in her business recently was developing solid relationships with super high-end builders who value us as much as we value them. Communicate with everyone always. It's all about who you know. Any advice for Brooke, Barry?
On the marketing front, yeah. I mean, the thing is, this year is different than other years. You know, we're a couple years removed from our friendly little pandemic that we had, and you know, there was sort of the home service and contracting boom era. We've now, you know, increased interest rates by I don't know how much, 300% or something along those lines. That's obviously drying up home equity lines of credits. Not as much movement in the real estate game, and that's not just, you know, that's across North America. Maybe different markets are going up and down, but what I would recommend is do a really good inventory of what's been working, and double check on what's not, because what worked in 2020, 2021, 2022, even last year may not be enough to run your market in 2024 and beyond. It's possible things get better, you know, interest rates come down. But the reality is we're in this game today, and we want to make sure we're doing what works today, and that might not be the same as yesterday.
Very well said. And that's a recurring theme. I don't know if you saw me ditch the sweater, but now I'm in the t-shirt. I'm swagged out today.
Yeah,
Nice
and the
logo
muscles
on
are
the-
looking good too.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. So, dude, give us a brief history. I want you to just maybe tell listeners, I think it's important that they know how you got here. So like very, very quick summary of 505 Junk in your story. And then as well, like maybe just go through the trials and tribulations, the failures, the face plants that you've gone through along the way to figure out these 4 tactics that we're going to go through later in the conversation.
Awesome. Sounds good. So I started Scott Ford, my business partner, and I started 505 Junk in 2011. I was about 3 years into a professional snowboarding career at the time. Speaking of face plant, I broke my ankle, lost my sponsors, and had to really do an inventory check on my life to make sure I was heading in the right direction, which I absolutely was not. So, you know, going to school in the wheelchair and starting off my parents' basement, launching a junk removal company, we just wrote a business plan and got started. The one thing we wanted to do differently, because what you'll find, and we'll talk about this in a small average job size market, is the barrier to entry is usually pretty low. You know, it's not going to take a lot to start a junk removal company. You need a pickup truck and 1 or 2 people, usually the founder themselves. And so we wanted to be different. And so we developed a unique model, a custom onboard weighing system onto the trucks that was going to allow us to stand out from the crowd. And off we went. So lots of trial and error along the way, ranging from buying our second truck on a line of credit and drying that up to having to then, you know, drive the profits to rebuild, you know, get back down to ground zero again. As we grew into sort of 20, 30 employees doing a few million in revenue, we expanded on a franchise system. We opened up 2 locations regionally in the greater Vancouver area. And that was, franchising is its own beast in itself. And there's pros and cons to it. It works in a lot of industries. I'm not going to say, you know, it works or it doesn't work. But for us at the time, not having airtight systems, not having a dialed in call center, not having all of our SOPs super lined up, at least for us in that time, it wasn't a great fit. So, you know, we fell flat lots, a lot has worked. We've grown to, we'll probably trend around 6 million in revenue this year, which for the larger contractors may not seem like a lot, but when your AJS is $500 to $1,000, it's a pretty high volume business.
That's a lot
model,
of jobs.
So it's a lot of jobs. It's a lot of clients. There's probably 12,000 clients in our CRM, and there's upside and downside to that. So yeah, I'm excited to get.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about the upside and downside. I think we'll start with the downside. So this will be like super relatable and resonant for business owners who run a small average job size business. They're going to feel like seen and understood maybe for the first time ever. And then for the business owners who, have the luxury of having a mid AJS or a large AJS business, I just want you to listen to this to gain some perspective and to learn and think about how different this business model is than yours. So Barry, take us through some of the unique challenges of a small AJS business.
I mean, the first thing is when we're talking about getting to 1 million, which is where every sort of, contractor or home service sort of entrepreneur wants to get to, you're doing it $500 at a time. You're not signing, $100,000 renovations or one large custom build for a home. You're motoring through this. And so that's one thing to consider is the resources required to just get to 1 million, not to mention scaling to 2 million, to 5 million, to 10 million, to 50 million. And there's a lot of great examples of companies that have scaled to that. But what you'll start to find is it's very systematic. Another challenge that you'll find with a small AJS is the turnaround time. So if I were to go to you and say, hey, Benji, I want to build a custom home and I want it to get started tomorrow, you're going to be like, that's not how
happening. This works.
And
yeah.
That's not how this works. If you were to call into our call center as a junk removal company and say, I'm moving out tomorrow, I thought I could sell this and it turns out I can't. I need this gone by the end of the day today. That's the expectation on the client, and we have to deliver on that. And so we always tell our clients, we're not quite as quick as Uber, but we can definitely get to you by the end of the day. And you can imagine the challenges that come with providing a same day service.
Yeah.
Another one that really comes to mind is the marketing prowess, the requirement to be an absolute killer in marketing. Sheerly based on the fact that you need so many clients and so much volume, so many jobs to drive the revenue on a smaller AJS. It's not just going to happen. You can't just depend on referrals and on having 3 or 4 big clients. You really need to build that marketing engine. This is
a really important point to me. I think that I find the most interesting. A lot of again, if you are doing high ticket stuff, you're building large, expensive things, doing large, expensive projects, you have the luxury of sort of resting on your laurels marketing wise. And I don't want to call anyone out, but if you talk to your average job size contractor about their marketing game, or you go have a look at their website, it's not strong. Sorry, it just isn't. You have a basic WordPress website, no SEO, no optimization. You've never run a paid campaign, never worked with a graphic designer or copywriter, because and that's fine. It's a relational game. You've got a good brand, a good reputation. You don't need that many projects to do it. But for you guys, right, it's you need to have a nuanced understanding of brand, deep understanding of SEO. You would need to have a perfectly optimized website with the right buttons in the right places. You're running Google ads. You probably are Google guaranteed and have LSAs going. That's just to name a few things. The list goes on, just to have a snowball's chance at hell at producing enough revenue to hit your break even and make money. So the weight that's pushed on the marketing and sales org is so much heavier in your type of business than others.
100%. And honestly, one of the biggest challenges that companies with a smaller AJS run into is, do I build this skill set in-house? Am I, as the founder or co-founder, am I a marketing expert? Or do I need to learn these skills? And if I'm not interested in it, or I am interested but don't currently have those skill sets, then you got to bring on an agency. And there's a lot of good agencies out there, and I'm sure there's probably a lot more bad ones than there are good, and they can sniff that. If you know nothing about what you're talking about, then it's going to
Cha-ching.
make it really hard to build that relationship if you're just going in saying, I'm doing 500K in revenue and I want to get to 2 million. Can you help me? What do you think their answer is going to be? It's going
We
to be yes,
sure
of course.
can, Barry. We'd love to help you for years and years and years. Yeah, anyway, really important point to hit. The marketing prowess needed to be competitive in the small AJS world is crazy compared to the larger AJS businesses. What are some of the other challenges?
Well, it doesn't stop at marketing. I mean, the marketing will generate the leads and the leads are going to flow in. But unless you have that good online booking system, and most importantly, unless you have a good call center to manage the customer service, to manage your recurring accounts, and most importantly, to convert the new clients that are calling in, good luck. I mean, that thing needs to be dialed in by day one. If you're going to start a small AJS business, and not have a desire to really crush it in sales and customer service, you're not going to get anywhere. And the same applies to if you scale to 5, 10, 20 million. If you don't have a really good call center system, the right VoIP systems, the right software, the right training, the right data points to track your conversion rates, to track the inbound calls coming in so you can track the production for your sales team, you're going to have a real hard time. And it goes back to the same thing. Do you want to scale that in-house, which in my opinion is a core necessity, or do you want to subcontract that to a company that is more than happy to charge you by the minute and take on all of those inbound leads? And again, it's not that there's an issue with that service. It's just that with a lower AJS, it becomes a necessity of the business, and to just have a blind eye to it is going to get you in a lot of trouble.
Talk about like some of the logistical headaches associated with this. We were talking offline. I can't put a finer point on this if I get this wrong, but I thought you said you guys do like 5 jobs per truck per day. And I don't even know how many trucks you guys have. So just think about, like, can you describe the network and the routes and the vehicles and the different touch points and the different addresses and postal codes? I mean, it gives me a headache thinking about it.
I mean, yeah, we'll do more jobs in one day than a high ticket AJS for the same size revenue that a company with a big ticket AJS will do all year. So like, yeah, if we're running say 10 trucks in peak season this summer, it's not unlikely for us to be doing 40 to 50 jobs, and 40 to 50 jobs at say an 80% conversion rate means you're taking 60 to 70 calls a day, 60 to 70 calls. A lot of those clients that booked in are going to have customer service requests. They're going to want to change their schedule, change the address. The truck teams are going to go on site, and a job is going to be larger than anticipated, sometimes 3 or 4 times larger. A 2-hour job can be a 2-day job all of a sudden. And so it goes back to that high volume of jobs relative to the size of the HAS naturally is going to create a lot of issues that come with it. And running the scheduling is one of them. And now, of course, there's not all downside to this, but that is the reality in a sense that if you have 2 people in every truck, they're expected to produce 5 jobs in a day. And the more you multiply that on the volume of trucks, it just requires your production management team, whether it's you as the original founder, or in our case, when we actually have, production managers, it just requires you to elevate your game that much more because you have to be so on top of every single job.
Any other kind of unique challenges, drawbacks to this model before we do talk about some of the upsides? Because there are some.
Not standardizing your procedures will kill you. It's honestly, it's not much harder to run a 5-star company with 1,000 reviews than it is to run a 3.2-star company with 1,000 reviews. And the difference is the standardization of the procedures that you've proven to work. It's about the training that you do with your team and the accountability that you hold them to. But because we're talking about the challenges, if you forget to do any of those SOPs, training, and accountability to the truck teams, you can be guaranteed that one of those 50 clients are going to give you a 1-star review. And if you multiply that by 330 production days in a year, you can get some serious trouble really quickly.
Anything else? You mentioned low barrier to entry, hyper competitive. I'm sure that's a pain in the, and I suspect there's a lot of sort of maybe talk about the needs on the tech stack front too.
Yeah, I mean, barrier to entry, it's often relatively low for a lot of contracting and home service businesses. But the reality is with junk removal, you literally need a pickup truck. I mean, you can rent a car or rent a U-Haul for $100, post it out on Craigslist and try and get a couple jobs and pay your U-Haul bill and off you go. There's probably about 180 junk removal companies just in our local territory, which is Vancouver, British Columbia. And we've estimated at least like 45,000 junk removal companies across North America. Now, I guess the challenge of that is it requires you to elevate your game in marketing. It elevates your game in your customer service so you can drive recurring revenue. In our business, we're at about 80% recurring revenue. For a commercial, it's about 98%. And even our residential revenue has surpassed, it's higher on the repeat than it is on the new at this point. And that's partially because we've been in business for 12 years now. And so we have a really good client base. But it's also a lot to do with the customer service. And if you're just solely relying on new revenue coming in, it's going to be an absolute nightmare.
So, I mean, we've painted a pretty bleak and depressing picture here. I think anyone listening would be like, why the would I ever start one of these businesses? There's got to be.
That's a great question.
There's got to be, you've been doing it for 13 years. There's got to be some upside. So, and of course there is. Maybe talk a little bit about a few of the nice elements of this model and you know, why, let's get to the silver lining.
Unfortunately, there aren't any. That's it. Podcast over. No, there's a lot of upside. And the reality is that all of those challenges, if you master them, become opportunities. I was literally in a meeting with my team probably 2 hours ago, and we're talking about, I was doing a training session with our directors around how to trend data in their department. And what my message was to them is the whole point around trending data is to project your future in numbers relative to your goals. And if you're not looking like you're going on point, you need to course correct and take action and convert those problems into strengths. And it's the same thing with a SWOT. People shy away from just listing all of the strengths, or sorry, all of the weaknesses in their business. They love talking about their strengths. We're good at this. We got a good website. We've got good leadership team. We've got this, you know, this and that. And it's like, I want to know about your weaknesses, because once we list out all the weaknesses and move them into the strengths, then all of a sudden we elevate the entire business and we have a whole new set of weaknesses that we can move into strengths. And so there's opportunity on the downside. The first one that comes to mind is typically we'll see a higher gross profit margin. So we run about 60% gross profit.
Yummy.
And yeah, it's yummy. It is for sure. And that's with us being very conscious of our pricing. We're sort of below our largest competitor, which is 1-800-GOT-JUNK.
You're at a 60% gross even in a competitive market. Yeah.
We are, yeah. Yeah, we typically won't just tank our prices just because leads dry up. We'll basically sit down at the drawing board and say, how can we become better marketers?
Yeah.
And that allows us to keep our gross profit margin high. Now, the other thing is in our specific model, because we charge by exact weight and we pay by weight at the transfer station, it allows us to keep the margins in check so our clients aren't paying too much ever, and they're also not underpaying and tanking our margins. So that's one area where there's a lot of upside is if you're smart with your overhead and keep your gross profit margin high, there's definitely a case to be made that you can run a really profitable business.
Cool. What else?
Lots of customers. So we talked about the downside to lots of customers, but there's huge upside. Doing, 10 million in revenue with a $1 million AJS means you got 10 clients.
Yeah. Not much of an email list.
Not much of an email list. Not much of a referral list, not many reviews online. not much volume of anything. And so the opposite of that is true. We've got over 13,000 residential and commercial clients in our database, and we do text marketing. We do email marketing biweekly. We do custom commercial email marketing versus residential, so it's a bit more tailored. We're doing our sales team when the phone's not ringing, they pick it up and ring it. Hey, we haven't seen you for a year. How you doing? Our commercial team is going through all of the commercial database and asking for referrals. Tracking them on LinkedIn. If someone moves from construction company A to construction company B, you keep the relationship with construction company A and you open up construction company B. So there's a lot of upside to having like that much data points with your customers. And the trick is a lot of companies don't do anything with it. And so it's important to stay on top of it.
Mm-hmm. Talk about the fast onboarding too.
Next day working.
Right.
Yeah, a lot of the hiring's slow. Don't get me wrong. Our operations team is very diligent of protecting our culture and making sure that because we are hiring people that are relatively new to their career in the junk removal space, especially for our waste technicians, they're typically not on their first job, but they're on their second or third job if they're a little bit younger. And we do get some people that are a bit more experienced and they move into a team lead role. But typically what we'll find is, yeah, we go through our hiring process, but the upside is that once they've been onboarded for that half day session, they're in the trucks the next day producing revenue. And they're appointed with a team lead, a waste tech lead, so that they can go and make mistakes, but we've got someone there that's going to clean it up so the customer experience isn't impacted at all.
So there are a few things to like about this model. It's not all bad. Is there, just to round this out before we get on to some of the growth tactics, is there anything else you would just share with listeners about some of the positives of a small AJS business?
It's relatively stable in any market. And a lot of people will say that our space, specifically the junk removal space, is relatively recession proof because if homes are expensive, then people are staying at home and maybe clearing them out a little bit more. If interest rates are low, then there's a lot of movement. And rather than doing an internal renovation, they're selling their house or moving their house. And so that's one side, which, that's debatable. But the reality is when it's a lower AJS, you're not really destroying someone's bank account by calling a junk removal company or a moving company to do a $500 pickup, or if you don't want to, climb on your roof and empty out the gutters, you're out $300 or $400 or $500 compared to, investing in like a $200,000 kitchen renovation or, redoing your driveway for $10,000. So that's the upside really, is that you can sort of plow through recessions. It might not be as pretty, but it's definitely not going to completely slow down.
Okay. That is the downside. That's the upside. Here's what I want to move to now, Barry. And this is really like the meaty part of this episode. Growing a business like yours is very, very different than growing a painting business, than growing a construction business, than growing many of the other types of businesses in the Breakthrough Academy universe. And so we've kind of boiled this down. This is sort of tongue in cheek to say this, but let's just, small average job size dominance in 4 easy steps. And I want you to take us through these 4 things. I'll ask a few questions about each. The first one on the list that you mentioned is dialing in the production SOP. So let's begin there.
Yeah, so this is essential. And it's essential for a few reasons. One is because when you first start the company, the first thing you want to do is get out of the trucks as soon as possible. And so you got to sort of take what's worked. You got to write up your own SOPs, and they're pretty standard across the board for our industry. But you got to get someone in there that can produce the work, allowing you to get out and focus on sales and marketing. And so that's at that beginner stage. You really just got to document your SOPs. And it doesn't matter if it's in Google Docs or whatever, but as you advance and grow, like, yeah, you're going to want to get it more dialed in, but that's applicable to if you have 150 trucks on the road. Your standard operating procedures for production need to be clearly laid out and trained on.
Okay, but somebody could say that about any business. Somebody could say that about, like, I mean, a factory, a restaurant, like that's just like a very like well-known business adage at this point. Is there anything, what's unique about small average job size and putting like an extra special emphasis on the SOP thing?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's because it's so repeatable. And so when we go to a job site, it's the same process every single time. And that customer experience needs to be reviewed across the board. So our drivers calling when they're 30 minutes away from the client. We've got a 2-hour promise window. Are they arriving within that 120 minutes, or are they going to be 7 minutes late? Are they walking up to the front door going knock, 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 smiling, introducing themselves by name and going through a walkthrough? Or are they just starting to load the junk without even saying hello? And the difference on that, especially in a smaller average job size, if you don't follow the step-by-step process and you're building 10 custom homes a year, it's probably not going to destroy the customer experience. What's going to destroy the customer experience if your home wasn't built exactly as they want it? In a $500, $1,000 average job size, it's really important to make sure the customer gets the full value out of the really limited time that we spend together, because we're only spending about half an hour with them on site. And we don't want them to feel like we just showed up, didn't say hi, and took off because we just wanted to, collect the money and run away kind of thing. So it's really about that customer experience where it's unique to the smaller AJS.
Do you think in some sense, because it's low barrier to entry and there's so many people they could go with, the service is on some level commoditized, and so there's like an extra special need for that customer interaction? Like a junk hauler is a junk hauler is a junk hauler, whereas a custom home builder, like there's big variance. There's really high-end luxury. There's kind of the more cheaper. Like with your more commoditized service, do you think it adds extra pressure to those customer service touches?
100%. It's the same with Starbucks. When you go to a Starbucks or a McDonald's, you know exactly what you want, and therefore you expect it. And if they deliver on that, you walk away and in your mind, it's a 5-star review. Whether you leave one online or not, it doesn't make a difference. And it's the same with a small average job size company. The customer knows exactly what they want. It's a very clearly laid out process. And if you deliver on that, you're going to get 10 5-star reviews, then 100. And I think we're over 1,000 online right now. And that's one of the biggest differentiators between us and the others. We have our competitive advantages that we talk about as a business. But the reality is if you're going online and looking and comparing your options, and you got 4.4 with 120 stars, or sorry, 4.4 average with 120 reviews versus 4.9 average or 4.8 average, and it's got 1,200 reviews, your decision's already made up. They're clearly the better company, both based on the service delivery and the fact that they've probably been in business a little bit longer, or their brand's just more superior.
Can you talk a little bit about your, like, how you SOP'd 505, whenever that was, and how you kind of broke down the project, how long it took, who wrote it, what tools did you use, how'd the rollout go? I mean, there might just be some learning there for another junk removal company, a window cleaning company, a landscape maintenance company, someone listening who knows that this is the right thing to do, but is maybe intimidated by the size and shape of the project.
Yeah, 100%. So it was actually one of the first things we did, believe it or not. So 2012, when we're still in my parents' basement, my mentor at the time, his name was Mike Drever. He started a company called Cruise Ship Centers, big franchise system, and he sold it to Expedia for something like 40 or $50 million. And he's like, there's two things you need to get really good at. One is strategic planning, and one is your standard operating procedures. You need to write out your whole operations manual. So we were writing SOPs for things that we didn't even really start doing yet. We were writing them for the operations manual of the future. And it wasn't anything special. It was literally, we drafted out our table of contents. This is pre-chat GPT. Table of contents. We wrote out all of the various systems that we needed to know how. And that's how we got started. As that grew, that manual evolved into something like Trainual. We've been working with Breakthrough Academy for many years, and like the BTA system is a big advocate of standardizing systems. And we've rolled it through Trainual, and most recently we've onboarded. ADP has a system called Workforce Now, and that does all of our payroll and everything. And it also incorporates all of our training, our onboarding, and there's a section for standard operating procedures, reviewing policies where employees can sort of acknowledge that they've gone through it, signed off, and now you can hold them to that level because they've literally admitted, I received the training, I went through this, I'm signing off, I know what I'm doing. And so you can actually expect like full production out of them versus just saying, hey, like, I'm going to train you for a week. I hope you're paying attention because by week 2, we expect you to deliver at the same level that someone's been with, us for 5 years or something like that.
Now, this might be sort of an obvious point, but there is some logic to doing this first. There is a reason that this is the first on the list of 4. We're going to talk about some more like, scaling or growth or marketing or sales oriented things in a sec. But the reason we start with dialing in the production SOP first is if you scale a SOP, the work to clean it up later is way bigger, and potentially by then there's irreparable brand damage done. So when we say, do this in 4 easy steps, there's a reason that production SOP is the first. Just, I think, a really important point to make before we move on. What's the second?
The second one is your call center, and they're all almost 1 and 2, but I think you got to really dial in the operations, your production SOPs first, because that is your final delivery of the service to the client. And it doesn't matter if it's your first client or your 100,000th client, like you want that to be nice and shiny, nice and clean. Next one's the call center, because ultimately, like, it's the same process. The clients are calling. Oftentimes you'll find in a lower AJS, like a client loves to just call in. I know we're in like a major tech era right now. And certainly there's a ton of great online booking engines and systems available. And I'm not saying stay away from those, but regardless if you have a good digital setup or not, you still need a good call center, because a lot of clients, they just want to call in. They're on their lunch break. It's their Saturday afternoon. They don't want to bother finding your website and plugging in all the entry. They just want to go ring, 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 505 Junk. How can I help you? Boom. Okay. This is my problem. Solution, listening, closed after 5 minutes, job's booked, and it's getting picked up that afternoon or the next day. That's what the client, they expect, that rapidness. And in order for us to, and remember, keep in mind, we have a lot of leads coming in because of the low AJS. That's what we talked about before. It's important to get, just like it is in your production, to get that really dialed in. And so it's the call scripts, it's the training. We say, with production, someone can get in the next day and start producing work. Nobody's answering phone calls on day 2 here. There's sort of 2 weeks of like rigid training. And then the 3rd week, we let the training wheels off. And by week 4, they're independent, working with their manager. But there's literally 80 hours of training, of intensive training that goes into each call center employee.
What were you saying earlier about, like, there are great online digital booking platforms, but were you saying that there's kind of still a propensity for your customers to want to do this over the phone versus, say, a click, book on the calendar, like do it 100% digital? There's still some demand to do the phone call?
Yeah, there is, because it's, and again, a percentage want to go online, but it's not like you're booking a massage at an RMT or something, and it's the same thing. Your date, your time, you're just booking it in. They've got questions. They want to know, okay, my parents' house where they've lived there for 30 years just has, like, every room is full of stuff. Or I'm a construction company and I want to inquire about what it looks like to work with you people. They want to actually like talk to people. And that's what we found in our business is they want to speak to someone. They want to speak to an expert that can answer their questions. And they're not just going to go to a generic Q&A on the website. And they want to actually have their problems solved almost immediately, because it's scalable in a sense that we can standardize a lot of our SOPs, but it's not so universal like it is ordering an Uber or ordering a taxi or ordering, an RMT, where it's the same thing every time.
No, that thank you for explaining. I was kind of wondering that, because somebody could make the case, hey, just go 100% digital and make it this perfect little self-serve, and you're using Schedule Once or you're using Calendly, and then it pushes to your CRM, and like and certainly there is a market for that, and some percentage of your customers do that, but you are saying people still want to be on the phone. Do you have you've mentioned the scripts and the training in 2 weeks. Do you have an opinion on like in-housing? Like, let me just ask you, do you guys have your call center in-house, or is this something that's farmed out, and why?
So we do it in-house. And I just wanted to quickly, before we move on that last subject, you 100% can go all online without a question. You do everything online. You can just accept to have a lot of lead slippage. Yeah. And if that's a choice you want to make, go for it. And so that's just something to consider. Now, as far as our call center, we've always done it in-house. It started with the co-founders answering calls at midnight because we were desperate for leads and closing jobs. And now we've got our team in-house that operates 7 days a week, right? You got to find the right people for the right job. And our team needs to be able to work on the weekends, and they're still getting their 2 days off. It's just not on your typical Saturday, Sunday. And over time, what we found, because we're at 80% recurring revenue, our call center team has evolved into more sales coordinators, and they're actually building relationships with a lot of our commercial clients. And so we're finding their names in reviews online now, where they'll be like, oh, I spoke to Bruno, or I spoke to Dante, and it was incredible service. And that's why we decided to go with them. It had nothing to do with 505 Junk. It was purely to do with how well engaged they were with the salesperson on the phone.
So you are very much like you are on the team that says do this in-house, do the call center in-house versus farming this out, because there are services you can hire. There are third parties that you can work with who can do your call center for you.
100%. And for us, it's a core function of our business model. And so when I'm looking at making a very important decision, like whether to farm out our call center or not, I'm boiling it down to and it's the same thing with the digital, with working with marketing agencies. Our Google ad spend got up to about $15,000 a month in its peak. And look, we can find someone to manage that ad spend for us and pay them $3,000-$4,000 a month. Or we could just pay a little bit more and have someone come work for us in-house full time, build that asset up in time in the form of a really good employee, and also leverage them to work on other areas outside of just Google ads. Mm-hmm. And it's the same with our call center team. They're not just, 911 call takers. They're updating our SOPs with us. They're participating in their weekly huddles. And so if I look at marketing, I look at our call center, they're core functions of the business. And so I believe we need to keep it in-house. There's a lot of stuff that we'll subcontract. We've got, I think, 14 or 15 vehicles. And so there's a case to be made. Why don't you start a leasing company, and then you could lease back 15 vehicles to yourself? It's not a core function of the business. We just sign the lease documents, happy to pay the interest on them, and off we go.
There's a deeper lesson there about decision making and strategy as a leader, which is if it is your core business, you should in-house it. To use more colloquial language, if it's your bread and butter, don't hire an agency to do it. Don't hire a third party to do that. That's your thing. So you better build some muscle, build some competency, build a team, build some tribal knowledge inside the building about how that thing, whatever it is done. And I think a lot of people don't think about that enough. They offshore or outsource or third party or subcontract what is fundamentally their bread and butter. And then a year goes by and that person's no longer available, or something changes, and they wish that they knew how to do the thing in-house. So just a good lesson there about business in general. I want to ask you a little bit about gamification and training. What you've I think learned quite a lot from Tommy Mello on this front, on the call center. I don't know if have you gone and done visits to his shop or just talked to him in person? What did you pick up from him? Because he's kind of a call center master.
Yeah, Tommy's a beast. They do 200 million a year. I actually met Tommy at the Winter Summit for Breakthrough Academy. He was one of the keynote speakers, and I just approached him at the end and was sort of picking his brain on how he scaled from 5 million to 200. And there just wasn't enough time to talk then. So we ended up reaching out to him and say, why don't we can we come by and with a few of my entrepreneurial buddies and just do a shop tour? And he actually invited us to stay in his house overnight. We got a tour of his place and of A1, and man, they're crushing it. They've taken it to the next level. So they've got up from that 200 million, a lot of that's booked online and a lot of that's booked through their call center team. And their training systems that they've built, just to show what like pinnacle call center looks like. They've got an 8-bay warehouse where they've converted each of the bays into they sell, service, and install garage doors. That's their thing, and they do it in 18 states. Each of the bay doors, they have a different garage setup where their technicians are coming in to be trained on how to install them. And they have kitchen setups because he says all the business, all the closing goes down in the kitchen. And so they actually have their sales team come and do like live training in this makeshift kitchen of where they're doing it. And of course, you attach all your key performance indicators to it. The thing about like the training side and the key performance indicator side is, regardless of if you're at A1's level, you're just getting started, or you're somewhere in between, your call center, the metrics are so important with the call center because there's such a high volume of it. If someone's conversion rate is 58% versus 70%, that makes a drastic impact on the business if they're booking over $1 million in sales per person per year. And so knowing those percentage points allows us to go to their manager and say, hey, look, Bob or Ashley or whoever is trending a little low on the conversion rate. What are you going to do to help them get back up? And then they can go in and look at the specific missed calls. They can look at the actual reasons behind why someone doesn't book, and they can find sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? They can find commonalities across the board and say, you're having a really hard time when someone uses the objection, I need to talk to my partner. And they just give up. And so using that one example, we can go, okay, well, you do realize that we have a free cancellation. So why don't we just get you booked in for this future date? And you can go and talk to your partner. And if they really are against all this effort that you've put into researching a good quality junk removal company, you can call us back and cancel anytime you want.
Yeah, but the important thing is when you're doing a crazy high volume of inbound phone calls, the percentage points, like literally down to the percentage points, have tens of thousands, 5-figure, 6-figure, potentially 7-figure implications on your overall revenue and your overall business. So that little dorky objection of I can't handle this one multiplied through the thousands of interactions that a call center person is going to have over the course of a year, it's a big deal. You better figure out how to like handle that one specific objection, or your performance and this entire business's performance will suffer as a result. So I love that point. Let's move on to the next one just for time. We talked about dialing in the production SOP. Then you need to optimize the call center. What's next?
Okay, this is one of my favorite things about this business model and potentially lower AGSs in general is the frequency of the buy. Junk removal, if you're residential, you're 2 or 3 times a year. If you're commercial, I've seen upwards of 2 or 3 times a day, depending on the size of the client. Window cleaning, I don't know the other industries as well, but I'm assuming like if you're a lower, if you're washing windows, it's not going to be once every 10 years when you build a new house per se. And so the monthly recurring revenue generated from both residential and commercial clients allows you to understand a really strong baseline of where your company's at. And that allows you to maintain good stability on your bottom line because you know what your overhead is, you know what your base monthly recurring revenue is, and anything you drive on top of that is really going to support that bottom line. And that to me is like, as an entrepreneur that's scaling, and is onboard, is bringing on more overhead, more people every single month, knowing that monthly recurring, the MRR, which, you know, tech industry uses it too. Your MRR is how everyone values every company. That is so important to have. And that's one of my favorite things about the business model.
So monthly recurring revenue on both sides, residential and commercial, that like unlocking that is the third step for small AJS dominance. In other words, can I ask you how you approach, like what you do on the residential side to do that, and then how that's different on the commercial side?
Yeah, they're both a little bit different. Residential is more automated. You know, you can't build a relationship with 3,000, 5,000 residential customers every year, but you definitely can digitally. And so we've got opt-in email lists. We've got text marketing where people are receiving like specific promotions if they book through the text message. We've got our call center team is making outbound calls. So we're really looking to just drive that like second, third purchase to the residential.
Can you talk a little bit more about the SMS stuff? Because that's, I think, I know you kind of blew past it there. I think people are sleeping on this. Talk a little bit about the text message marketing that you guys are doing.
Yeah, so we use a company called, I believe it's Simple Texting or Simply Texting. Anyways, you can Google it and you'll find it. And it syncs with our email marketing system, which we use MailChimp. And in MailChimp, we segment out our clients based on cities. And you could even segment it out even further if you want to go by postal code or something like that. And the benefit of doing that is it gives us a segmented list. And so we can send specific text to our clients to say, let's say we want a truck to book 3 more jobs for this coming Saturday. We can be like, send this text to our 2,000 clients in just the Delta area or whatever city you're operating in, and do this specific promo for just those clients. And so typically we'll get, you know, you get those 2 jobs knowing that you're going to drive them in that area, because you don't want to be driving 45 minutes to one town and 45 minutes to the next with a low AJS. It's all about concentrating your density, geography to make sure it's density to keep your margin high. So that's the benefit of text, is you can get very sort of specific.
That's really cool. So using automations, you can basically send out a text blast, not an email blast. And by the way, the open rates and the read through rates and the click through rates on SMS are orders of magnitude better than email, and they won't be forever. So this is my hot tip. Get on it now. This is an untapped market still, especially for blue collar businesses. And Barry's just a little bit of a pioneer on this front. That's a really powerful idea. Hey, this postal code on this day, we're going to be there. Let's offer a 25% discount. Send text now. Boom, boom, boom. Fill up the calendar basically in an hour. So cool. Where were we? Okay, monthly recurring revenue. That's the residential side. What do you do for the commercial clients?
It's way more personal. And so we break it down into new business development and account management. So new business development is, some of it's old school. Like we literally will create prospecting lists. We'll reach out to them directly through phone or LinkedIn and do DMs that way. I don't even think that's old school. I think that's just the school. That's just the school of thought. Like it's not old, it's not new, just do it. You literally just profile your target market, figure out who's going to drive the most recurring revenue, coupled with who can you add the most value to. And typically when you call them, they're not going to be pissed off to get a phone call from you, because you're like, oh, wow, you're XYZ, I've seen your trucks on the road. You guys have over 1,000 reviews. Like, it's not an unwarranted phone call. It's not like we're calling them to, I don't know, sell them a cow or something, and they're a construction company and not a farmer. Like it's well received. And that's what people forget. They're so scared to make the phone call. Even though, like, I use this story with my team. One of our biggest clients, they spent over $400,000 with us with an AJS of $810. I literally picked up the phone, called them. It was the vice president of property management. They're a huge developer in Vancouver. And the conversation went something like, hey, Bev, it's Barry calling. Please call me back. Just left a voicemail. She called me back. She's like, hey, Barry, do I know you? I was like, no, but you do now. Ha, ha, ha. And she's like, oh, okay. And she's getting ready to hang up on me. And I was able to dive into some of the environmental issues at their company and tie in the fact that we can help solve that. And literally the next Monday, we had a contract signed for all of their buildings, picking up junk, probably from like 6 or 7 buildings every month. And That's just one phone call. Any business that sells to commercial can do that. And you just have to do it with high frequency and a lot of accuracy.
Okay, but you had said something to me the other day on the phone, which I thought was a really powerful insight, which is like and there is new school and old school, and I want to just bring up this idea. The 2010s and 2020s, and with the way that digital marketing has gone, and landing pages and automations and email marketing and text message marketing, whatever, we have all these new tools and tactics available to us. You were saying to me something really interesting, which is you think that the new age marketing tactics have almost like the part of the brain that does ground game, quote unquote, old school, like biz dev, like find the list, call them, tell them about your services. They don't do that, call them again the next week, send them a gift basket, ask them to do a lunch and learn, buy them dinner, whatever. Like the part of the brain that does that is like atrophying with other entrepreneurs. And people are scared to do that. Do you maybe just want to unpack what you were saying about that or what you've observed?
Yeah, it's interesting. Like people, the fear of doing the outbound is only from rejection. People know it works. It's been around forever, and it's the fear of rejection. And so they take a bit of a softer route, a more scalable route, where maybe I'll do an email blast, or maybe I'll, send them to the landing page, and all this stuff. Look, all this stuff works. Don't get me wrong. When our team's doing outbound calls, they're equipped with digital PDFs. We do custom landing pages for clients. If it's a big enough opportunity that can do $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 a year in revenue, we'll create a landing page just for them to entice them to come work with us. So it's a hybrid of both, but the actual concept of picking up the phone, saying, hey, can we go for a coffee? Can I take you to a hockey game? Can we meet in person? Can I come to your office? I'll buy your team donuts and do a lunch and learn. Like, how else do you ultimately sell outside of reaching out to someone and building that relationship?
Yeah.
And it's just never failed for us. And it's the same thing if you're selling geographically out of town, the same thing. I mean, if the deal's big enough, you get on the flight and you go visit them. If the deal's not big enough, then you do everything over Zoom. And so then it becomes like sort of, oh, it's a tech play, but it's not. You're still just selling as a person to a person representing two businesses.
Maybe just to add some color to this point, can you talk about where your business would be at had you not kind of figured this out early on, the ground game and building up commercial clients and having a stable roster of repeat customers who are buying your stuff a lot? I mean, what role has that played in the overall trajectory and growth that you guys have experienced over the last, 5-6 years?
I mean, that's a great question. Like we'd probably have a quarter of our trucks.
Right.
No org structure. It would be the three partners, sort of one's doing operations, one's doing sales, and one's doing the rest. We'd have no administration, no inbound sales. We'd have a smaller truck team. We'd probably be doing, $1 million in revenue this year instead of 6 million. It just wouldn't be the same.
Yeah.
We're sort of approaching probably 70, 80% commercial now. And the residential is great because it drives reviews, it's credit card payments, cash in the bank the next day. It allows us to build like community and reputation in specific communities. But the real driver of our growth and our future is around the B2B relationships that we've built out.
It's also way sexier for a potential buyer. I mean, we're not really talking about exit strategies today, but if you want to look at, what an M&A, an M&A expert or a strategic buyer, if you're looking for a high multiple and a good exit, having that is going to be a massive, massive piece of it. If it's just a phone number and you work with some homeowners and it's hand to mouth all the time, you don't have that stable book, that foundational book of business built out. Forget it. Okay. What's the fourth? We've gone through 3. What's the fourth step to small average job size dominance?
This is critical, and it took us way too long to figure this out. But the reality is I haven't read a ton about it online, and I'm starting to hear a lot more about it now. So it didn't just like pop out of nowhere for us. But we noticed that in our industry, it's junk removal. And you could argue that home service and trades in general, it's not a sexy business. Like people aren't like graduating from Stanford and just like crying to come over to your company and being like, when's the next opening? It's like, it's just not the case.
You're not getting many like Harvard grads wanting to be garbage men, in other words.
No, you're not. I mean, I wanted to when I was a kid, but maybe I'm a bit unique in that sense. And so what we've noticed is that it's really important to focus on the development of our employees. Now, I know that sounds like, okay, Barry, no. What I'm talking about is like, it's a very specific system that we've incorporated in our business where it's a 1-page plan. We sit them down prior to building out this plan. We sit them down for about an hour and a half once a year. You can do it more frequently if you want, but at least once a year. And we go through and we get a really deep understanding of what's your purpose? What do you like about 505 Junk? What really makes you cringe about working at 505 Junk? What's something that irritates you? What are some missing systems? Where do you see yourself in 2 years, 5 years? How much money do you want to make in 3 years from today? If you own a home, do you want to get some investment properties? If you don't own your home yet, what's your plan to buy your first home? If you don't want to buy your first home, good for you. What do you want to do? And they just like, it takes 10 minutes for people to loosen up a little bit. But what we find is like, once they get into it, they just like open up. They open up their hearts, they open up their minds, and they just let all the juice out. And we understand their purpose, their core values, their goals. And we outline a little step-by-step plan on the missing skill sets, like the soft skills, such as like management, leadership, running GSRs, whatever, and the hard skills like writing a good Excel template or knowing how to, effectively do a Zoom call or whatever it's going to be for their role. And we take that system, we build it into one little page. You can leave it at that, one little page. We use Asana for project management, so we incorporate that into their GSR. And we just get whoever's responsible for managing that employee, they're checking in every GSR. Are you moving towards your career goals? Because if they're not, they're going to find a company that will help them get to their goals. That's the reality of it. And it's the same anywhere. But yeah, that's been sort of from a systematic standpoint, like it comes from a place of love, but love isn't enough. I could tell my team I love them and I care for them, and I respect them and I trust them. I can say that all day. But if they're not seeing development in their employee journey at 505 Junk, you can be rest assured that they're going to find another place to work.
And is there something about small average job size businesses that makes that so especially critical? Because again, you could say the same thing about any business and employee development and career ladders, and people need to grow and develop. But like what's maybe uniquely important about that for your model?
Yeah. And I don't know the org structures of larger AJSs probably as well as the people listening to this that have the larger AJS, but naturally with a higher gross profit margin, it's not like you're running 10% overhead and so your net profit's 50%. That's not, I mean, I'm sure that'd be great, but then there'd be millions of us doing this. And so naturally you have a higher overhead because your gross profit margin's so high. Where's that overhead going? It's going to your org chart. What drives your business? Right. It's your org chart. So that's the first thing, is it's like your org chart is like the driver of this business. The last piece to this, and this is like the biggest opportunity from an entrepreneurial standpoint with a lower AJS, because it's everything we talked about, dialing in your production SOPs, optimizing your call center, dialing in your monthly recurring revenue, developing your employees in your org structure. If you can do all the 4 of those properly, it's not unrealistic to suggest that you can put a really good quality general manager, director, CEO, COO, whoever, to step in and run this well-oiled machine for you, thereby freeing up your time to either focus on expanding that business model or whatever else your dreams and goals are. I'm not a big fan of like, let's go sit on the beach for 4 hours because you're going to get sun baked after 3 and never want to go to the beach again.
Skin
but
cancer,
it frees up your time. And that's something Dan Martell talks about a lot, is you want to buy back your time. And you can really, I truly believe you can really do that with a smaller AJS model.
So let me just recap, guys. Like if you are a junk hauler, like Barry, you do window cleaning, pressure washing, exterior maintenance, property maintenance of some sort. gutters, landscape maintenance, you do service plumbing, you do service electrical, you are a smaller average job size business, low average ticket, quick turnaround. Like you would know if this sounds like your business. These are the four things. And you're going to have to make some adjustments to make this work for your unique industry and your unique service and your unique market. But it's basically these four things. It's dial in your production SOP, because when you're doing insanely high volume, like Barry said, the difference between a 3.2 and a 5 is actually not that much. You need to optimize the call center because you have so many leads flying at you. If you have someone who's sloppy on the phone or isn't able to handle an objection and their conversion rate drops from 75 to 64, that's a big deal and hugely impacts your business. So you have to optimize the call center. You got to tap into monthly recurring revenue, both on the residential and the commercial side, because that gives you a foundational base of revenue that you can rely on month to month. And then you can throttle up using spend, using ads, using outbound, as you need, but you have this safety net underneath you a little bit. And then lastly, he's talking about employee development, because these businesses, because they're so logistically complex, they are overhead heavy. You do need more people in the office. You do need more non-revenue producing roles to manage the logistical needs, the marketing needs, all the stuff we talked about. And that to me is kind of like the perfect playbook for how to grow a small average job size business. Barry, last question. What's next? Like, what's next for you guys at 505 Junk? Dreams, and you just talked about your employees' dreams and ambitions and goals. What are yours and Scott's?
Yeah, so I'm really excited about this. So I've been working with Dan Martell a little bit, and he's got this quote where he says, you take your painted picture, vivid vision, whatever you want to call it, you got to build it so big that every single employee in your company can fulfill their 3-year painted pictures, vivid visions, right? And so for me, we just renewed ours, and we want to make sure we're building a company that's not only big enough to take our employees to the next level, we want to make sure that we, as the partners and founders of the company, can take our dreams to the next level. And we've got big ones. So what's next for us is we're going to be opening up 505 Junk in new cities. Canada, but also we're looking at the United States, and we're going to take a bit of a different approach to it. We're going to be looking for other junk removal companies that want to partner with us, really talking about all the stuff we just spoke about and making sure we can add value to them to help get them unstuck in their business and their junk removal journey as an entrepreneur and help them catapult to the next level. It's not going to be a traditional franchise route. We're still working out the kinks and the logistics. It's probably a bit of a form of an accelerator. But I'm excited to be rolling that out in the next little bit with our team. And really the goal here is that we've spent 12 years really knowing this industry. I absolutely love entrepreneurship, but I love junk removal entrepreneurship more than anything. It's this weird little thing. It saved my life, metaphorically speaking. And I know there's a lot of people out there that, let's be honest, no one starts a junk removal company because they're like in like a good spot. Like typically it's not exactly the sexiest, most exciting model. You're trying to crawl your way out of maybe a darker path, and junk removal is the light to a really bright future. We want to help people accelerate down that path. So I'll be, working on that with our team a little bit more, but that's kind of what's next for us is going through that expansion with our brand.
You said to me the other day, and it's so funny. I know you so well and we're close friends, but it just cracked me up. You're like, nobody that starts a junk removal business is in a good place. And I just thought that was so funny. But it's true. And jokes aside, like we've just gone through, there is massive upside, massive potential. It's a hugely fragmented market all over North America. So I love what you guys have done with the vision with 505, proprietary technology, pay by weight, building an amazing brand. Tried the franchise route, didn't work for you guys, and you're still kind of like visioning your way to a really big future in what has been historically a really difficult industry. So I want to thank you for your time today. I just, if you've been listening to this and you have this type of business, take these 4 things and get rolling with them. I promise there's ROI there. Barry, until next time, my friend, thanks for coming on the pod.
Thanks so much for having me, Benji. Always a pleasure, man.
Thanks so much for watching this episode of Contractor Evolution. If you've already subscribed to our channel, consider sharing this episode with another contractor who you think needs to hear it.